Hey guys, thanks for joining Learn to Play. My name is Lance, and today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Run Fight or Die. Run Fight or Die is made by 8th Summit. It's a 1 to 4 player game unless you have the expansion for it that'll make it 1 to 6. In Run Fight or Die, you're basically in this small town that's been overrun by zombies. Each player is working on their own to try to race around this town and gather up the survivors. And the survivors will give you special abilities as well as give you hindrances that will slow you down or change your game that makes you have to adapt. So the goal of the game is to gather the most victory points by getting the followers or defeating the Mutant Boss or a couple other things, and being the overall winner when the game ends. So let's head to the table and I'll teach you how to play. Alright, so the first thing we're going to just cover real quick is setup. I'm not going to go over most of it because the book lays it out pretty well. You're going to have your decks of cards you're going to go ahead and shuffle. Make your stack of victory points for your mutant. This guy is actually a Kickstarter mini, so you probably won't have him. If you have an opportunity to pick him up though, I would recommend it. He is pretty cool. From here, you're going to have some different characters, so you're going to want to select one of those characters to play as. And then you'll take a dashboard as well. And then the last thing you're going to do is set up 2 zombies in Zone 1, 3 zombies in Zone 2, and 4 zombies in Zone 3. Once all the players have done that, you are ready to start the game. Alright, so before we start the player turn, I'd like to cover some of the cards real quick just to kind of go over them. So the first one we have is the event card, and they have various effects on them. Some of them will list that you can hold card, so that means that you can hold on to those and use them at a later point. Next we have location cards, which you can only ever draw 1 during your turn, and they'll have various effects and they'll last until your next turn, and if there's any effects on them that you have to resolve, then you resolve them and then discard that card. And then we have the follower cards. So the follower cards have various things on them. On the top corner, they're going to list the amount of points that they're worth if you hold on to them. And the followers will stay with you the entire game unless an event, dice roll, or skill requires you to lose them. Some followers have negative effects that are always active. Some followers have bonus effects, which you can choose to not have active. And then some of them have special effects, and those are always active as well. Usually those are bonus or good things though. Alright, so once you've determined a player to go ahead and hand them the reference card and the 5 action dice with the gray event dice. So that player will go ahead and roll the dice for his initial roll. And he would go ahead and first off resolve the event. So for this one we roll a charge, so immediately advance any 3 zombies from your board forward 1 zone. So let's go ahead and move 1 up there, and we'll move 2 up here. Alright, so now that that's done, now we can flip this card over, and this will show us what the combos are for the action dice. So right now we've rolled 2 run icons, which allow us to move 1 zombie back 1 zone. If we move a zombie that's in zone 3 back, then they're just wiped out of the board. We have a baseball bat that'll do 2 damage to zombies in the first zone, so we'd be able to kill 2 zombies. We have a search, which would let us draw a location card, and we have a book, which would let us draw an event card. So let's hold on to the bat, and let's go ahead and hold on to the search, and let's go ahead and re-roll these 3. Now we're allowed up to re-roll dice up to twice unless a follower or event changes that. And if at any time we roll the zombie icons, those dice are locked and would have to stay set unless we draw a fleeing card. If we draw a fleeing card and resolve it, then we can re-roll them as long as we have additional re-rolls left. So for our second roll, we pick up another search, a run, and a gun. So at any point we can choose to hold and stay with the dice we have. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll go ahead and resolve. So run allows us to move one zombie back, so let's go ahead and kick one out. We have a baseball bat to take out 2 zombies in the front. We have a gun, so let's go ahead and finish off that last zombie in the front. And then we have 2 search icons, which lets us draw either one follower or draw one location. So since the goal of this game is to have followers, let's go ahead and grab a follower. So we found the old codger. So the penalty with this is that he's slow and grumpy. I get to roll 1 less action dice, so the next time we roll, we'd only get 4. But we get to take our time, so we gain an additional re-roll each turn. So we can roll up to 3 times now that we have him. All right, and so that finishes off the action phase. So then we'll move into the zombie advance phase. So at this point, all the zombies are going to move forward, 1 zone. If we have any zombies that moves from zone 1 onto our character card, we would take 1 damage for each zombie, and then that zombie would get discarded. And then we're ready to move into the hunt phase. So during the hunt phase, you would spawn 3 more zombies to zone 3. And then if we had rolled any zombies on our action dice, then we would have added those as well. Alright, so the last thing we need to do during our turn before it moves to the next player is check endgame conditions. So if a player suffers the last wound during this turn, the game would immediately end and that player would lose, and the rest of the players would count up their victory points. Now the one exception to this is that if a player gets 5 survivors or 5 followers, they can declare at the end of their turn end game. If that happens, then all the players, including that player, would get 1 more turn, and then they would count up the victory points and determine the winner. During the end game, in that situation, players can die and not end the game. All players would get their final turn, and then the game would end, but the players that would be killed would lose no matter what. The other way the game can end is if the mutant zombie boss loses all 20 of his victory point wounds that he has. And then the last thing is if you draw the town line from the locations and the total amount of followers is equal to whatever the number of players is. So for example, if we were playing a 2-player game and the combination of the 2 players had 7 followers, then the game would end because those conditions are met. Alright, so let's go ahead and cover the mutant zombie boss real quick. So there's a couple ways that he can come out, either by location or event cards. When he does come out, based on the number of players that are in the game, it will determine the number of hit points he has. So you'll add those hit points to his tile, and they also double his victory points. So as he takes wounds from players, they will get these tokens to represent victory points. At the end of the player's turn, they'll draw a mutant card and resolve it, as long as the mutant boss is still in play. The mutant boss can be dealt damage by guns that the player rolls on the action dice, or if the player has the loot card Book of the Dead, he can also use books to do damage to the mutant boss. And if the mutant boss is already in play and another card or event would cause him to come back out, instead you would calculate his hit points again using that card's reference and subtract 1 from it and add those to his base that he already has a stack of wounds on. Alright, so the last thing we're going to cover is final scoring. So you would gain 1 point of victory for each point of health that you didn't take. So in this situation, the athlete took 3. So we would subtract that from his 5, and so he would get 2 victory points for having 2 hit points left. We would get victory points for each follower the player has, based on their number. So we got 1 for the cool guy, 3 for the old codger, and 2 for the attractive nurse. So we got 6 there. And then we get a victory point for each token that we have for the victory point tokens. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. And then as long as this character didn't die, which we didn't because we still have wounds left, then we would compare that with the other players. And so we ended up getting 6, 10, 12 victory points.